Welcome to B2B Marketing Methods. I'm your host, Terri Hoffman, and I'm the CEO of Marketing Refresh. Let's face it, embracing digital marketing is daunting. This podcast was created to make it more approachable. Join me as we talk to CEOs, sales leaders, and revenue growth experts who will share lessons learned and tips from their own journeys. Welcome to today's episode of B2B Marketing Methods. We have a very special episode thanks to my guest. And I want to take a second to just quickly introduce her and go over some of the points that we're going to talk about today. So this is Sarah Smith. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you, Terri. Terri and I, this isn't our first time sitting down talking. You should know that, but you'll hear more about that. Thanks for having me.
I'm so happy I get to interview you this time. This is fun.
Yeah, because you came on my show. We were in a much smaller office at the time.
It's been really, really fun to watch you guys grow. Sarah is the co-founder and CEO of a company called SpeakerBox Media. And I'm going to have her explain who's SpeakerBox Media. I'm going to ask you to go over that in just a minute, but I want to touch on some of the high points of our conversation today. So we're going to be talking about who SpeakerBox Media is. We're going to be talking about how you can use a podcast to answer some of the questions that your B2B marketing audience has. We're going to be talking about some of the reasons why you hear people don't want to do a podcast and what their concerns or pushback is about podcasting in general. And then we're going to talk about how you can use podcasting to build brand awareness and the fun conversation about attribution. You know, how do you measure whether or not a podcast is working, which, you know, we could have a whole entire episode about that. We kind of had a pre-episode about it before we started recording. And then we're going to talk about how to tailor your content for different pieces. So just wanted to give a little bit of preview, but first off, welcome, Sarah. Thanks for joining me on my podcast at your studio.
Yeah. How about that? How about that for collaboration and partnership?
Yeah.
No, again, thanks for having me. I could talk about this topic all day. So I'm really excited we get to sit down and do this in person.
So let's start off with the basics. You're the co-founder and CEO of SpeakerBox Media. Explain to me, tell me a little bit about your story. Who is SpeakerBox Media? How did you get started? Give me the backstory.
SpeakerBox Media is a B2B podcast agency and studio. We are full service, specifically focused in creating multimedia content for executives and B2B brands and helping them become the authority in their industry. And so we started in 2018. I started the company with my co-founder and husband, Ray. And the way that the company came about was really in an organic way. He was into audio engineering and marketing back in the day, creating music. And that's what you did in Houston. So we're headquartered in Houston, but, you know, record nationally. And my background is in photography. I've been shooting and selling photography since I was 18. He was on an engineering track and I was on a pharmacy track, like most people in Houston are. And we both at some point were just like, we don't want to do this with our lives. That's not what we want to do, not what we're passionate about. And so we were dabbling, creating things on the weekend. And I was in my final year of business school, and you have to do a fictitious business as part of your final capstone project in business school. And so we had been dabbling with the idea of starting a business. And so I said, well, let's kind of make it official, unofficial. Let's see what this could look like if I'm going to spend a year researching this project. SpeakerBox was actually like my fictitious business, and it was the first version of a business plan. And when we did the research, I felt like as I progressed through that, it became very apparent to me there was an actual opportunity here. There was, and that at that time, which was 2017, 2018, there was nothing podcasting in Houston, very little, if anything, in Texas. Most things were film specific or focused. We are like, holy moly, do we just find something that doesn't exist here? Wow. And I think both of us, there was no convincing at that point. Both of us were just like, I think we found it. We found this overlap in our unique skill sets. And we felt like we could bring something new to the market and to Houston, which is does global things, the coolest stuff in the world that I think a lot of people didn't even realize happened here. So we started it in our spare bedroom of our house with $500 and said, great, let's go get our first clients. And I won't lie, that really was largely Ray's job. The first 2 years, he ran the company mostly by himself. I was part-time, would come home and do the books after my full-time. And once we grew it to 6 figures, then that's when I came on full-time. So.
Yeah. It's been a fun adventure and I'm sure we get to see the fun and exciting parts of it.
Yeah.
And you two are, really rolling up your sleeves and putting in the hard work to build it to what it is. And so I've known you guys, I want to say, for about 4 or 5 years. It may be longer, and I'm getting old, so I don't always remember all those details. But I think what's been interesting too is to watch you guys test different business models. And, we're going to talk about podcasting and marketing, but ultimately I have a lot of business owner listeners and business people who are listeners. And I'm not going to ask you to walk through the different business models, but maybe you could just talk a little bit about how the journey, that you've gone on, because you've tried some different things. And I think I really respect that you guys have been willing to try some different approaches until you found, your niche in the market and what would actually work as a business model in Houston.
Yeah, honestly, when we came out, I felt we both have a high sense of urgency. And so we both felt behind. We were like, oh my gosh, someone's going to do this tomorrow. And honestly, we didn't realize how early to the market we were.
Mm-hmm.
Marketing in Houston is still largely developing and has been. And I don't have to tell that to you, who's been at this 3 times as long as we have, right? And so multimedia content and even businesses having social media platforms and media platforms, that's like unheard of, right? At the time, but we didn't know that. So, naively came in thinking we're behind and we're going to push this forward. One of the early decisions we made, one thing about us I'll say is we've never been scared to zig when everybody else is zagging, We've always been okay to go against the grain, but you do have to, from a cash flow and revenue perspective, be able to support that. We've always reserved at least 20%. We've always put back into the company as founders, and we've always reserved budget for innovation. I've always kept that running since the inception, even if it was just Ray thinking about ideas on the weekend, pushing, thinking of creative ways to apply what we were doing different. But we did make an early decision to have an office in a time where people were really backing out of that and going remote. But I really believed opening a studio, even at the time, though it was 100 square in a co-working space, was an effort to be able to show what we can do.
Yeah.
So one thing that's always been ingrained that I think has helped us is showing our work. We've always been big on that. And listening to the market. Every single thing, every product that we've built at SpeakerBox has come from listening to the market. And post-COVID, so we opened our office in 2019 and then COVID hits. And it's like, did we just make the worst decision and get into an office lease when everything went remote? But to our benefit, our office was so small. We called it the Houston Pod to make light of the fact that it really was like a pod. You could fit maybe 2 or 3 people in there, and we're like, forget it. We're just going to dive into the creativity of it. We're Space City. This is a space pod, whatever. But funny enough, people needed to social distance at that time. So that little pod, there were a lot of great combos had in there. It came in at a time where people could utilize it, and we just kept listening. We've always been ear to the ground, listening to our customers, consistently connecting feedback, and applying that, not being scared to pre-launch product lines and see how they perform, get feedback on what people liked about them, what they didn't. If I were to give this away for free, would you take it? Those type of things, and just never really attaching ourselves too much to our feelings about what we thought the company should be, but really built in a way that we wanted to focus on serving them well, regardless of where they were in their marketing journey. Sometimes that was heavier on the education side than I would have liked. Sometimes it was pushing us on the creativity side, but we've never shied away from taking up the challenge to help them become the expert and to start producing multimedia content for their companies.
Thank you for listening to B2B Marketing Methods. Please be sure to follow us on your favorite podcast channel and leave us a review. We'd love to hear from you and connect. You can find me on LinkedIn or visit our company website at marketingrefresh.com.